of the chapter 2 to see where there's some lessons you've learned, something that you can share, something that you could teach somebody else that maybe you learned through this chapter. You can explain a little bit more. Basically, do a review of chapter 2 before we start getting in chapter 3, where Paul's kind of take a change of pace and direction a little bit in the next couple of chapters here. Romans chapter 2, I believe we're starting in verse 23, according to Aspen's post today. I wasn't sure, so I actually put my notes starting at 25, but wasn't sure if we got we didn't discuss them very much, so we'll look at them here. Thou will make us a boast of the law, though through breaking the law, honorest thou God. Thou that makest a boast of the law. We got 22 here saying, the same man says, do not commit adultery, dost thou commit adultery? Thou pourest idols, dost thou commit sacrilege? Which we looked at sacrilege being something that's dedicated unto the Lord, and you don't give it unto the Lord, you save it for yourself, or you do something different. Modern day version of sacrilege could potentially be if you say, okay, I'm going to give $100 to the Lord. You determine in your heart that's what the Lord would have you give. And then Sunday morning comes, you say, nah, we're going to take the family out to eat. But you had dedicated that onto the Lord, and now you're pulling it back. It's just a version of it. Now, I'm not trying to teach you anything else than that, other than you dedicated it onto the Lord. We're not going to get into giving and teaching there on giving, but it's a matter of something that was dedicated. What else is dedicated for Christians unto the Lord, or should be? Our time. More generic than that even. Obedience, which would include our whole life. We are bought with a price, therefore glorify God, who's redeemed you. And so our whole beings are dedicated unto the Lord and is to be committed unto the Lord, and yet we pull it back to do it for our own selfish means, our own selfish advances, and are we not then, in the strictest definition, committing sacrilege? I'm dedicated unto the Lord, but yet I'm chasing all kinds of other goals and priorities and dreams of my own that is not in alignment with what God would have. Now, I'm not saying it's wrong to chase dreams and goals and have those things, but when you start to rob from what you dedicated to God, that's where the problem goes. So with that kind of, in the context of it, says in verse 23, thou makest a boast of the law, through breaking the law, dishonors thou God. What are we looking at here? Kind of refers back to verse 17, which is what the reference there is. Behold, thou art called a Jew, restest in the law, and boastest of God. So here they make a boast of the law. We have the law. And then they break the law. What are they doing? By breaking the law, what are they doing? Dishonoring the Lord. Is that, looking back there, but I could just, I can't click on the word if I don't got it up. Madzo, render infamous, despise, dishonor, suffer. When you dishonor the Lord, what are you doing? Does it matter? Is it saying necessarily you let him down? No. So when you boast of the law, we're people of the law, we're people of the book, we know the law, we know these Jews say we have the law, you don't have the law, and then they go and they break the law and they dishonor us God. What are they doing? Misrepresenting? Whose name takes a hit? Yeah, Jesus, God's name takes a hit. It's not a matter of simply, as a Christian, when I live outside of the bounds of what the scriptures give me, it's not necessarily when I do go outside of that, just my name at stake. I carry the name of Christ. That's weighty, isn't it? Just be blunt. That's why I wish a lot of people that claim to be Christians would shut their mouth about being a Christian. Because that's why in our world you have a bunch of people that say, well, Christians are filled with hypocrites, because it is. We claim we love the Lord, we claim we love the Bible, then we go and live contrary to it, make decisions contrary to it, use language that's contrary to it, and yet the whole time saying, yeah, I'm a Christian. I'm not talking about that incidental slips. I'm talking about a pattern of life that drags his name down. Will make us a boast law through breaking the law. Dishonorest thou God? It's a question. What would be the answer? Yes. The name of God is blasphemed among the Gentiles through you. That's harsh, isn't it? Paul cutting him any slack here? The name of the Lord is being blasphemed through you. Question, how are we doing on that? Vilify, speak impiously, revile, rail on, defame. How are you doing on defaming, vilifying God's name? Any other thoughts on this verse? Questions? Understand? Right? That's what Paul was bringing out. They both, so we got the law, but yet they can't, no one can keep the law. I'm not knocking the Jews here, because it's impossible to keep the law perfectly. It's a goal, and it tells us of the holiness and nature of God, does it not? Part of our Sunday school lesson when we looked at personal separation for this last Sunday is built on holiness, right? Holiness literally means separated onto. And we are to be separated onto God, and yet we tend to mix with everything else of this world. And we make that foolish boast. I thought we were at 25, that's why I printed off from 25. Added to the sheet this time. Commentary quote. I'm going to give it to you, even though you guys don't usually take one, but since I put a commentary code on there, so you guys can see what it is. Left over. You print too many. Yes, I believe so. All right, let's go on to verse 25. For circumcision verily profiteth, if thou keep the law. But if thou be a breaker of the law, thy circumcision is made uncircumcision. To read the commentary there that you have from R.C. Sproul. The cutting rite of circumcision signified that God was concentrating, cutting Israel out of the massive nations in the world, separating it to himself, distinguishing the Israelites in an art of grace. Israelites bore a sign in their skin that they had been chosen by God's grace to receive the greatest benefit that any nation could have. The negative side of the sign was that Israel bore in their bodies a sign of the covenant that not only had promises, benefits, and blessings, but also curses. Is that a powerful thought? Let's just, at the end of there, you see a reference. The blessings and curses. Deuteronomy 28. Do what? All his commandments. All these blessings overtake us, shall hearken on the voice of the Lord thy God. Thou shalt be in the city, blessed on the field, the fruit of the body, the fruit of the ground, the fruit of the cattle, increase of the kind, the flocks. Blessed shall be the basket and store, blessed shall be the one that cometh in, and blessed when thou goest out. Great blessings there for those that follow the Lord, that go after him. Wouldn't that not have been the banking of the Jews? We're the Jews, we're blessed of God, we're chosen by God, we have special priority, but then they forget oftentimes that same text, cursed shall thou be in the city, cursed thou shalt be in the field, cursed shall be the basket store, cursed shall be the fruit of the body and the fruit of the land, the kinds of flocks, cursed shall be you, and cursed thou goest out. If thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord and deserve all of his commandments and statutes. Was it simply they're chosen, so they're blessed? But is that blessing come with equal cursing? Kind of goes back to that concept of too much is given, much is required, is it not? Yeah, they had the great benefit of being the Jews and the blessings of God upon them, but it came with a responsibility. Thoughts, questions? Circumcision verily is profit if they'll keep the law, but to me is useful. How would circumcision be profitable in the text of being beneficial? Add to you. How would circumcision be profitable if you're using the term profit in the manner of gaining an advantage or giving you greater wealth? Would probably be not there. Was circumcision say this? I like the other word there, trying to get at. Circumcision is useful to you. In other words, it identifies you with the law if you keep the law. It's not useful to you if you're not going to keep the law. Because if you're keeping the law, you can sit there and say, the Jew back then, my circumcision shows I'm one of God's chosen, and henceforth you see how I live based on what his law gives me. But if you're not going to keep the law, is it beneficial to you? It kind of goes back to my concept earlier. I wish people that call themselves Christians would stop going around calling themselves Christians and then acting like the devil. Because it's misrepresenting. If thou keep the law, but if thou be a breaker of the law, thy circumcision is made uncircumcision. What does that mean? Did those that get circumcised also become uncircumcised? Kind of a yeah, that's, I have a simpler thinking of it, but I think it was on the same line. What does circumcision represent? What? Set apart, that you're whose? You're God's, right? Your circumcision, if you're going to be a breaker of the law, makes it so it's not, you're just like everybody else. It's not useful to you if you're not going to operate within the law. If I'm going to operate outside the law, it would not matter if I was a Jew, if I was circumcised or not circumcised, I'm still not. That makes sense? I'm operating outside of it anyways. Thoughts, questions? All right, 26 then. Therefore, if uncircumcision keep the righteousness of the law, shall not uncircumcision be counted as circumcision? Again, the quote there from the commentary, important as it was, circumcision was only an outward symbol, and rather than freeing Jews from God's law, circumcision made them even more responsible for obeying it, because the ritual testified of their greater knowledge of their sin, of God, and of his will in regard to them. What are we seeing here? Therefore, if you're uncircumcision, therefore, if the uncircumcision, who would that be? Gentiles, anybody that wasn't part of the nation. Keep the righteousness of the law. So they do what's in the law. They keep that righteousness, that ordinance or whatever of the law, shall not his uncircumcision be counted for circumcision. What's Paul saying there? Logodizomai, take an inventory, conclude, count. What? They're equally qualified because why? Yeah, they're doing the law. They're keeping the same thing the Jews were supposed to keep, even though they're not circumcised. They're following after what the Jews should have been following after. They're equal on equal footing. They're to take inventory, that to be counted, to take an inventory to conclude, esteem, impute, lay number, reason for the circumcision. So someone that's following after the law, whether they're inside the Jewish community or not, are on equal basis with those that would be inside it because they're following what God has commanded. Does this not go back to what he's already stated, that God is no respecter of persons? That outward sign of circumcision, does it matter if you're not going to do what God's called you to do? What is the modern equivalent of circumcision? By many. Not sure if I completely. In the Christian circles, what's a modern equivalent? Something that you do as a sign that you're part of the family of God. Baptism. People will say that baptism is the modern day circumcision. Like I said, I'm not quite completely sure if I follow through on their reasoning completely on it, but that's what they'll say. Does your baptism do anything for you if you're not going to follow the word of God? No, it's pointless. It means nothing. Because that was mind off rails. That baptism saying I'm part of the family, just like that circumcision, but then you live outside of it, you might as well not have done it. There are people in our society today, are there not, when you talk to them about spiritual things and they'll say it and tell you, oh yeah, I'm saved, and I was baptized as a kid, or I was baptized, so I'm part of the church, I'm good. Try talking to some Catholics and you'll get, and Lutherans, you'll get that whole thing that they were baptized. So they're part of the family and they're going to be in heaven. It is meaningless if you don't follow, just like the circumcision one. Are we good? I want to move on. I have a thought. Right. That's why it talks about being a circumcised heart. It means taking away the desires of the heart that are going to lead you away from God. Not literally circumcising your heart. That would be a disastrous decision. You get to meet the master soon. All right, 27 then. Shall not uncircumcision, which is by nature, if it fulfill the law, judge thee, who by the letter and circumcision dost transgress the law. Now that's fighting word, if you understood the culture. In other words, Paul's saying those that keep the law that are not circumcised, those Gentiles, are going to judge you that don't keep the law even though you're circumcised. That's fighting words to a Jew. Commentary here from Porcelli. One further observation that Paul may be hinting at truths he'll be made clearer later in this epistle. There's one method by which the law's righteousness can be fulfilled. It is only by Jesus Christ. Paul's implied point is that uncircumcised Gentile can accept Christ as his righteousness and thus be in a position to judge the self-righteous Jew who, in spite of letter and circumcision, do just transgress the law. Because of their letter, their positioning, their placement, if you will, the letter there, their grammar, their placement to transgress, violate, break the law. Yeah, the letter is grammar. Writing note. Grandma. Grandma's a letter. All of these, yeah. Grandma writes letters, so that's why. I don't know, we'll have to find out once we get there. We got to look for one that has the gram prefix with a pa affix. I should know that because it comes up. I seems familiar to me, but missing it right now. It builds on each other, anyways. Again, like I said, fighting. Up with Grapho there for the grave. Hope that's not. Yep. Right. Many fled Jerusalem during the persecution in the first century. Many ended up in Rome. And this is Burrow on it, okay? Burrow is a 101. Paul is sitting down and doing this because he's trying to put that church at Rome saying, hey, you're all at the same level. Because you're circumcised doesn't make you better than that guy. It's the one that's doing the law. You're at the same level here. Are we not all at the same level? Absolutely. Your birth, your upbringing, your rearing, whatever is irrelevant. Your heart that's chasing after God matters. And he is merciful to us, that even though many of us have blown it in the past, God gives us, I don't know how many chances, as long as our heart continues to go. And that's the beauty of it. We tend to hold grudges. God forgives. Other thoughts? It's often good to remind yourself of that, of who the audience is, to answer those questions of why. He's doing it because such a mixed group. And what would that have caused in the church? Just out of your speculation, Jewish superiority and how they were trained that they were the God's blessed and everybody else was Gentile, heathen, filth. What would that have brought to a church that was starting salvation by grace through faith, not of the law, but you start incorporating these Jewish people in with non-Jewish people? Would there have created a headbutting, an automatic feeling of superiority? We know God. We have, that's what he started off this chapter with. Remember last week or the week before? I have the law. I have God. You are coming from a pagan culture. You're coming to the same God. The God of the Old Testament is the same God of Jesus Christ we're worshiping. So we have a beneficial background. And Paul's trying to lay them bare, saying we're all equal. That circumcision doesn't do you any good. Other thoughts? 8. For he is not a Jew, which is one outwardly, neither circumcision, which is an outward in the flesh. Is that circumcision? Is outward in the flesh. Here's Jameson, Fawcett, Brown, 3 people that wrote a commentary, JFP. In other words, the name Jew and the rite of circumcision were designed but as outward symbols of a separation from the irreligious, ungodly world unto holy devotedness in heart and life to God of salvation. Where this is realized, the full signs of significance, but where it is not, they are worse than useless. He is not a Jew, which is one outwardly, apparent, publicly appear. So those that appear as a Jew, which is circumcision, really, my sarcastic brain, how many people are actually presenting their circumcision in the church? Be a little more private, but that's not what they're going after. They're going after the Jews, the Jewish culture, the ones that come in, look at my Jewish background, look at my Jewish robes and all of that. Look at my heritage, which is an outward in the flesh. Here's it, neither is that circumcision, which is outward of the flesh. So in other words, it's not the ones that are in that outwardness of it all. That basis of it all. Then we come to the verse 29. So we'll wrap this and we'll talk about it all. Verse 29, but he is a Jew, which is one inwardly. The circumcision is that of the heart and the spirit and not in the letter, whose praise is not of men, but of God. And here we have Warren Wiersbe, tremendous commentary for those that are just getting going and studying the word. Wiersbe does a dynamic job, in my opinion. Jews praise each other for their obedience to the law, but the important thing is the praise of God, not the praise of men. When you recall that the name Jew comes from Judah, which means praise. That's an interesting anecdote. This statement takes on a new meaning then. The praise of God. If you look, I have listed there Genesis 29. So here you have whose praise is not of men, but of God. We have the praise of God. And if we go back to Genesis 29, when Judah was born, and she conceived again and bare a son, he said, now I have praised the Lord, for you have given me a name of Judah and left his bearing. Right there's a definition there that Judah name literally means praise. The praise of God. She was giving the praise to the Lord. She called his name Judah because I will praise the Lord. So the name Judah, meaning praise of God, the cherished of God, if you will, the lifted up. Just to look at that other verse, listen, Judah, the firstborn, shall praise thy hand and shall be on the neck. So both times that Judah there is connected to praise. So we have, he is a Jew that is one inwardly, the circumcision of the heart and the spirit, none other, whose praise is not of men, but of God. Whose praise are you seeking? Whose praise are you seeking? God's praise. And if Judah literally means the praise of God, And it's talking about we are not, the Jew is one inwardly. When we follow what God has commanded us, what is a rightful title of ours? The Jew. We are the praise of God. And he's saying basically it's no longer a national identity, it is a spiritual placement. It's no longer those that are outwardly the Jews that are God's people. Now, are the Jews God's people still? And all the promises to them are still going to be given to them. I'm not in the replacement theology that the church replaces the Jewish people and those promises. Do not get me wrong there. But what I'm saying is what Paul is trying to teach is what's important is those that have the praise of God because they follow what God has called them to do. They've circumcised the heart, circumcision of the heart and the spirit, and not of the letter. The heart, the thoughts and feelings, mind. Remember that heart is not the blood pumping vessel. It is that your belief, what you love someone with all your heart. It's that center of the emotions for people. In the Hebrew language, what would have been? What? No, it's not grandpa. That's letter. In the Hebrew culture, there was a different place for the center of the emotions. What? About the bowels, your guts. And you had the guts. You have a gut feeling on this. We still kind of use it today. But can you imagine if we use that for modern day? I love you with all of my bowels. Ooh. Little bowel pictures for Valentine's Day for everything, give you my picture of my intestines. That would make things interesting. Anyways, thoughts? I would outwardly, I would still be a Gentile in the fact that I'm not part of the Jewish. Spiritually, I would not be a Jew inside the family. So my question is yes, and my answer is yes and no. I do not automatically become an Israelite, for lack of a better way of putting it. So none of those promises that were promised to the nation of Israel are going to come to me because I'm part of his family. I have the promises that he's given to the church and to his redeemed ones. But I do not jump into the Old Testament promises that isn't to the nation of Israel. I'm fine with that. But I am a spiritual Jew because I endeavor to follow after the promises that we would be part of, or the Old Testament. There are promises, though, of him to make them a mighty nation, to restore them. That is promises that I'm saying are to him, or to them, sorry. The other promises of making them, that are to the offspring would go to Christ. I would agree with that. That's where I'm trying to be careful because it is a very prominent thing out there today, taught by quite a few people of replacement theology. That we, the church, have replaced the nation of Israel. They are no longer God's people. They are no longer, all those Old Testament things are gone. We are now the only ones, and God is done with Israel. So what does it matter to us if they're wiped off the face of the map? Because we are the people now. And I'm not on board with that. He chose them. Why? That's what he did. And if I want to pick at that scab, then I have to pick at the same scab and say, why did he choose me? And I don't want to go down that path either, because I know I am unworthy. Vastly. He does some. In our library, there's a series, the B series, that he goes through books, and his commentaries are more. They don't go as in deep as like you'll get with MacArthur or Sproul, but he'll hit those higher points. You know who J. Vernon McGee is? Messing out. If you ever hear him, J. Vernon, you can pull him up and hear his sermons through the Bible. J. Vernon McGee, and he, what? No, that's just how he would say his name. This is with through the Bible, and he actually preached through the Bible in 5 years or something like that. I have his commentary series in my office, but he's very, very aimed towards the common man. He used to be on Christian radio a lot. He's still out there, I know that, but I haven't been able to find him lately. When I read his commentaries, though, because I listened to him so much growing up, I hear his voice as I read his commentary. Kind of creepy and kind of cool. I imagine the same thing will happen to me when later on in life, when if the Lord tarries and allows me to outlive him, which I'm not so positive on anymore. If I outlive MacArthur, reading his commentaries, I'll probably start hearing his voice more too. Stop hearing his voice. Current. Other thoughts, questions? But both Wiersbe and McGee, to me, are very good commentaries for a beginner. And I'm not trying to say they're not good. They're not deep. They're very good. I really appreciate them, and they helped me out a lot in the beginning. Wiersbe has a way of taking a whole section and kind of crystallizing it into points that help you framework it. In fact, unfortunately, I had a family member of mine call me and say, what do you think about preachers that just read a commentary? Well, our pastor gets up and he preaches, but you can tell he's reading. So we thought maybe it was just he's reading his notes. But then they started to sound familiar, and we found the commentary from Warren Wiersbe, and he's reading the commentary as his sermon. Said, what do you do? And I said, that's a good. As a pastor, I would say you need to lovingly approach him with a lot of respect, a lot of grace, because God still placed him there, and make your decision whether or not you're going. To me, I'm not against guys using commentaries and referencing a commentary and even a lengthy portion of it, but give credit and make it your own. Don't read it and then pass it off as your own. They are no longer at that. It wasn't because of me. They decided to move on. Anyways, I appreciate him a lot. And a lot of his commentaries, like I said, we have in our library. Just look for the books that starts off with B-E, then something. Those are his. Most likely. And he's mostly in the New Testament. J. Vernon McGee goes through the whole. Other thoughts, questions? I got a couple more minutes before snack time. Yes. Okay. Yeah. You're not a Christian because of your baptism outwardly, but of a baptism of the heart. Yeah, it'd be interesting. I never thought of going back and taking out changing the words. And that comparison to me shows our problem in modern society there, and I kind of touched on it already. People trusting their baptism just like the Jews trusted their circumcision. I was baptized, I'm good. So you can live this life completely contrary to the word of God. Well, I was baptized. And I've shared with you before, I had co-workers that I worked with at McDonald's, and one girl I worked with, I think I shared this with you, didn't I? Shared it with somebody not too long. So one girl I was interested in, but dad wouldn't let me date her because she was Catholic. But I got talking to her because she was going to confirmation classes, and I'm like, well, what's that all about? Well, it's these classes I got to go through to be confirmed into the church. After that, I'm done with this. What do you mean you're done with it? I'm done with church. I don't ever have to go back because I was baptized and now I'm confirmed. I'm good. I don't have to worry about it anymore. I'm like, that's not what the Bible says. Since I liked her, I didn't debate her. Now, another guy I worked with at the McDonald's wanted to be the first American Pope, and we had some conversations. And I was also mean to him. I'll define that. We had a big rush on a Friday night during Lent. I mean, they told us they were coming. It was, I believe it was a Catbird game getting out, which is a semi-pro basketball team. And these buses were going to come to McDonald's, and it was going to be right towards closing. And so, like 6 buses pulled in, and we had staff for it and all that. Me and him were both working. And after it was all done, the manager goes, "Take what you want from the bin, have a meal, and then come up and let's get this clean." So I quick went up there and I grabbed every fish out of the bin, went back and started eating them. And being a Friday during Lent, and he goes up and grabs a couple quarter pounders and Big Mac or whatever, comes back and he sits down and I'm eating my last fish. I'm like, "What you got there?" "Got a quarter." I'm like, "Aren't you a Catholic and this is Lent and Friday?" He chucked it in the garbage and stormed out. It wasn't nice, but it was my personality at the time, and still. I would refrain from any relationship with them other than friendship. That would be my counsel. I mean, they are seeking the Lord, they are looking for the Lord, and henceforth you can be their friend. You can point them to the Lord, get them coming to a gospel preaching church. And until they make that decision to be saved, you dishonor the Lord by yoking up with them. So I would not start any relationship until salvation, first and foremost, are done. Secondarily, I would even hesitate there after that until you understand where they're headed in their theology. And the reason I say that is I've seen too many dating conversions. A guy likes a girl, so he'll say a prayer, so she'll date him, or vice versa. And they say the prayer, he's saved, so now they start dating, they get married, and he was never genuinely converted, or she was never genuinely converted. They did it because they wanted the relationship, they didn't want God. And so there's an awful lot of care that needs to be taken there. I have seen multiple. I don't have time to try to think through in my head how many, but I would say over 10, 12 go bad. I've seen 2 go well. And the 2 that went well was by the grace of God. The one followed through the pattern, that would be my sister. She was in high school. One of the guys she worked with at the North Country Steak Buffet in La Crosse wanted to date her. And she's like, I'm sorry, I can't. I think he was Catholic. But you can come to youth group with me and you can come to church with me. And you can sit by me there, but I can't go on a date with you. And so public places, things that aren't dates. I mean, you can have a date, I guess, to church, but people don't usually think of it. It's not a romantic thing. It's more going to those types of places that you're going to learn. A bunch of people are going to a bowling alley. You're not going as a date. You're going bowling with other friends too. But when it starts becoming a couple thing, you need to back off because your heart is going to be taken quickly. That was the beauty. Like my sister, he started coming to church. He started coming to youth group, listening to sermons. He'd go to church at the Catholic Church in the morning with his parents, come to church, Sunday night church with our family. I wasn't there yet. I was already out of the house. My oldest adopted sister started coming on Wednesday nights. The Catholic didn't have anything. And Neil ended up getting saved. And then once he graduated from his high school, because he was still in his parents' house, he had a very smart guy. He had a full ride scholarship to University of Minnesota for his intellect and for engineering. Once he moved off to go to college, he joined a Baptist church, but he was being respectful to his parents because that was the authority over him. So he couldn't do it before. Then he was also baptized. And it was at that point that they started dating. But she put all kinds of guards. The other one I saw that worked, I honestly believe, was the mercy of God. That it was the guy that was saved, the girl that wasn't. And I was waiting for it to be a train wreck like every other one. The Lord got a hold of her heart and miraculously, and they're a dynamic couple for the Lord today. But I've seen it happen the other way. And I do not say that we're trying to be cautious, but that is I stand. Unequally yoked is unequally yoked. It doesn't matter how much you fit every other way. You can be 2 peas in a pod, perfectly made for each other. But if Christ is not the center of it, it's going to be a difficult, if not. You have no business doing. I do not believe in dating evangelism. Leave it there. I've had. Just leave it. I know of people that will come in, well, I've seen it work. Well, I've seen it. Yeah, that's okay. I've seen a lot of things work. But it doesn't mean you should make a good practice out of it. You know, that's a hard part. You start even with witnessing like that and trying to bring them to the Lord. The joint bond is going to grow. And the caring, the compassion, the depth of that is going to get harder and harder to break free from if you don't set some guidelines. That's where I would even recommend in that situation trying to hook her up with another woman that can help disciple her or help her see what is Christianity is all about. So he's not doing that, but somebody that is theologically sound, going through a Bible study with her to show her what it is to be a disciple of Christ, hook her up with other ladies that are chasing after God, and have her make friends of them in a way that she can start to see this more fully to protect his own heart. Because the more time he spends, the more lack of distance he keeps, the more coupley things he does, the less he's going to care about anything of the Word of God, even though he may now. Our heart is deceitful and desperately wicked, and it will skew every other thought. Out of time by 10. I had 5 minutes left. I'm doing a Bible study right now with a guy on Thursdays. That is a good one. Starts off with salvation, second chapter. Goes on from there. It's a good study so far. I'm working on it to do it as our book study, because I think they have an app. Make it even more. Dove into that. All right, let's close in prayer. Lord, thank you again for your word. Thank you for, Lord, thank you for opening up. We can be Jews spiritually, that we can be to the praise of you, to the praise of God, that we can be part of that family. Forgive us of the many times we go after our own things and we act and operate as if we are still of the uncircumcised heart. Help us to have that heart that is dedicated, that heart that is after you, that the pattern of our life, the decisions we make will be to be pleasing to you in all things and be to your glory and honor. I pray all this in your precious and Amen.